Hi, I'm Pastor Kurt, and this is your 5-minute Bible study. Today, we're going to be looking at 1 Samuel chapter 3. This is the story of Samuel and Eli. Now, Samuel is a young boy in this scene, and if you look at the first few chapters of 1 Samuel, you'll hear about his mother, Hannah. Hannah desperately wanted a child, and she prayed to God. She even told God that she would dedicate her child to God. Part of the neat thing about Hannah is that in her prayer, we see a lot of similar themes that show up in Mary's Magnificat in the Gospel of Luke. A lot of people don't know about this connection, but if you compare Mary's Magnificat to Hannah's prayer, you'll see a lot of similar themes going on. Well, eventually Hannah did have a child, and she named him Samuel. And she was good on her promise. She dedicated Samuel to God. So she took Samuel to the temple, and he was basically raised by the priest Eli. Now, Eli had a few sons of his own, but we'll get to them in a moment. In this scene in chapter 3, it's kind of a funny scene because both Eli and Samuel are asleep. Samuel hears God calling him. Well, he doesn't realize that it's God. He thinks it's Eli. He gets up, runs to Eli in the middle of the night, and says, "Hi, Eli, I'm here. What did you want?" Eli wakes up and says, "I didn't call you. Go back to bed." Well, this happens about 3 times. And eventually, Eli realizes that God is the one calling Samuel. So he tells Samuel, "Next time you hear this voice calling you, simply say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.' And then in the morning, I want to know what he says to you." So Samuel agrees. Samuel goes back to bed, hears God call him again, and says, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." Now, usually, when we talk about this scene of the call of Samuel, this is where we stop talking about it. We focus on just the funny little parts where they wake up in the middle of the night and, "No, I didn't call you, go back to bed," that sort of thing. But if we keep going, then we hear what this message is that God wanted to tell Samuel. Well, the message is that God wants Samuel to tell Eli, his mentor, that Eli and his sons are no longer fit to be priests, especially Eli's sons. Eli's sons, even though they are priests, they have corrupted some of the offerings that people have brought. They've taken advantage of people. So they are not doing what the priest should do, and God is not happy about that. So now it's Samuel's responsibility to tell his mentor that his mentor and his sons are not fit to be priests. Naturally, Samuel can't go back to sleep after he hears this, because he doesn't know what in the world he's going to tell Eli in the morning. Well, morning comes, and they wake up, and Eli's all excited because he says, "Okay, so what did God tell you last night?" He puts Samuel on the spot. Samuel tells him the truth. He tells him what God has said. Eli appears a bit stunned, but simply says, "It is the Lord. Let him do what seems good to him." Eli accepts the message. So there's a couple of neat things to look at in this story. The first is, remember that Samuel is a boy here, and yet he's being called by God. God's call to you is not dependent upon your age. Throughout the Bible, we see people of all kinds of ages being called. We've got the boy Eli here, and we've even got people like Abraham and Sarah, who in their older years were called by God. God calls people of all ages. And in this scene, we also notice that sometimes the message God wants you to say is not always a message people want to hear. this message that Samuel had to deliver to Eli was bad news. That Eli and his sons were no longer fit to be priests. It's natural why Samuel was so nervous about delivering this message. But after Samuel delivered this message, the text tells us that God was with Samuel. And God didn't let any of Samuel's words fall to the ground. Samuel became known after this, that he became known as one to whom God speaks. So even if God is calling you, remember that the message might be hard to deliver, but God is there with you. And it doesn't matter how old you are. God can call you no matter what. There's your 5-minute Bible study for today. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.